It's such a pain in our heart and in our mind, because I couldn't imagine doing that to my children, to anybody that I loved for that matter.
Tonight, generations of survival. A young woman explains what the residential schools did to her, even though she never attended herself.
The memorial was put back together by community members following the vandalism and is continuing to grow again.
Someone vandalizes the memorial for children at the site of Canada's oldest residential school.
To be able to bring a glimmer of hope and wonderful news for the youth is, let me just say, I get emotional when I think about it.
And finally, some better news. The Indigenous Games are set to go ahead, but not for another 2 years. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Another disturbing discovery has been made at a former residential school in British Columbia. According to the Penelakut tribe, more than 160 unmarked graves were found at Cooper Island Industrial School on Vancouver Island. The school was run by the Catholic Church from the 1890s to the 1970s. The Penelakut tribe notified neighboring nations of the horrific discovery in a letter confirming over 160 unmarked and undocumented graves. The tribe plans to raise awareness about the Cooper Island School in the coming weeks. They will march for the children and have healing groups set up on the Penelakut Island. We were unable to get a comment from the tribe before airtime. APTN's Tina House recently traveled to the Cowessess First Nation in Saskatchewan, where 751 bodies were discovered near the former Maryville Residential School. In today's Stories of Survival, we meet Chastity Delorme, an intergenerational survivor, and warning, some of you may find this content disturbing.
You can see where they started, like where the reserve took over the cemetery.
It's a somber walk through the cemetery, which has some marked headstones, and then 751 unmarked grave sites that were recently found by ground-penetrating radar. For Chastity Delorme and her 19-year-old daughter, Jada, they are here to pay their respects to family that has been laid to rest. Her grandmother, Mary Bell Tanner, attended the former Maryville Residential School when she was a child.
It's nice to be able to come here and be with your kokum and your great kokum.
In fact, almost all of Chastity's family attended the Maryville Residential School.
Both of my parents and my grandparents on both sides were born and raised in this territory. Cowessess First Nation has always been their home.
And the trauma they endured at the school is difficult to comprehend.
My grandfather, which was my kokum's brother, he shared some stories about what he experienced. And sometimes they would get so sick from the food that they ate, that they would vomit. And then they would be severely disciplined for vomiting, and then they were forced to consume their vomit as a part of cleaning it. And so I had to hear that story again.
How does it make you feel to hear that?
Hurt.
Her grandpa has passed on now, but the painful past still carries on.
It's such a pain in our heart and in our mind, because I couldn't imagine doing that to my children, to anybody that I loved for that matter. It's just so inhumane and humanly wrong. And so, that's, one of the stories that was, shared with us.
And like so many residential school students who grew up to start their own families, they never really dealt with their own trauma, which then trickled down into the next generation.
Unfortunately, on my dad's side, my grandmother, who is still with us, who still blesses us with her life, she's a beautiful 98 years old. We didn't grow up hearing stories from her or my mushum. And that's because we feel that they were so affected by the residential school era. They never passed down anything, the language or any of their teachings, to my dad or my aunts or uncles. And there's 11 of that. And right now we're still blessed with all of their lives. And they fought hard to keep my aunts and uncles and my dad out of residential school, but they still ended up being day scholars.
Chastity identifies herself as an intergenerational survivor and says she is determined to break the cycle with her own children and grandchild by raising them to be strong and proud of who they are.
Times are changing over the years, and Indigenous people are becoming more resilient and not afraid to speak anymore. Now they're not afraid to talk and share their stories.
In 1996, the school was torn down, but during the demolition, single bricks that were under the windows were found that students had spelled their names on, and this brick had her late grandmother's name, Mary Bell.
I miss my Cookum, and to see her name, that she was a young woman back then, and I often think that I just wish I could go back, because if they had people like me and people like us, she wouldn't have had to live in that place.
Tina House, APTN National News, Cowessess First Nation.
Heartbreaking stories. The National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available for survivors and others who might need support. That number is 1-866-925-4419. A memorial at Canada's oldest residential school was vandalized over the weekend. Items placed at the steps of the Mohawk Institute in Brantford, Ontario, were allegedly moved or burned by a lone suspect over the course of 4 hours on Friday night. Brantford police have a photo of the alleged suspect. Janice Montour says the incident did not deter community members.
So the memorial was put back together by community members following the vandalism, and is continuing to grow again. And the police are asking for members of the public to help identify the suspect who was responsible for the vandalism of the memorial.
In northwestern Ontario, hundreds are fleeing their homes, with thousands more on standby, which represents 49 Northern First Nations. It's calling on the government of Ontario to declare a state of emergency. That would trigger an immediate response to assist remote communities threatened by forest fires raging across the region. A few hundred residents from the communities of Poplar Hill, Deer Lake, and Pekanjicum have been evacuated since the weekend, with more than 5,000 residents of these communities still waiting to be evacuated. The communities of Bearskin Lake, Satchico Lake, and North Spirit Lake are also on high alert for potential evacuation. This incredible video taken from the air near Pekanjicum First Nation in Northern Ontario. As of Monday, there were 68 active fires in northwestern Ontario, including 19 that were classified as not under control. More than 400 people have been evacuated to Thunder Bay. These pictures are also from Pekanjicum and taken by Amanda Sanawap, as she and her family were fleeing the community. In a statement, Nan Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler called on the province to act, saying, quote, "Lives are at stake. There is no time to waste." In British Columbia, the Saikus and Stellatan First Nations concluded a court case against aluminum giant Rio Tinto Alcan, the BC government and federal government. The case is over the impacts of the Kenny Dam, which was built in 1952 to power a smelter in Kitimat. The trial started in late 2019, with the First Nations arguing the dam's diversion of water from the Nichako River has devastated the watershed. Joining us now is Saiku's First Nation Chief Priscilla Mueller to talk about the case. Chief Mueller, thanks so much for being with us. The court case has now concluded. Well, when do you think you'll see a decision?
Thank you for having me. I don't think we're going to hear a decision made until for about maybe 6 months, we're thinking. Yeah, so the judge has 6 months to decide on the case, and it'll be late fall probably or early in the new year.
What are some of the impacts you've seen caused by the dam on the Nechako River?
Some of the, the main impacts to our community is the dam really destroyed our river. When you think about, 60 years of diverting water, we've had impacts on our salmon, our Chinook, and our sturgeon. Our sturgeon is almost extinct right now. Back in the day, this was our sustenance, and our communities used to have fish camps down in the local town. Right now, about 10 kilometers, we had fish camps all along the river, and that's where we spent our summers, and that's where we harvested fish, our sturgeon, for winter, and for our community to be able to survive on that.
Chief, what are you hoping for when this case is decided?
I'm really hoping that we will be able to restore our river, and that our communities will be able to have a say in how the river is managed. Back in the 50s, when they were talking about this dam, none of our communities were invited to sit down to be in those meetings with the government, the province in Canada and Alcan. So we were never invited, and now we would like to have a say in how the river is going to be managed, and we'd like to see it restored back to its natural flows.
Chief Mueller, we'll leave it there, but appreciate you joining us and looking forward to the decision.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that. Have a good day.
Time for a quick break. Coming up, the continuing fallout over a post on an RCMP Veterans Association website. Welcome back. A post to the RCMP Veterans Association website calling for people to move on from residential schools is still causing a lot of reaction. It was followed up with an email to all members from the Manitoba chapter of the association. The email suggested members read a book called From Truth Comes Reconciliation, saying this book is not for the people who think that the subject and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report are too sacred for either discussion or criticism. And this book is for people with open minds, those willing to consider alternative perspectives. Retired Mountie Bruce Pitt Payne joined Daryl Stranger earlier with his reaction.
Bruce, thanks for joining us. What was your reaction when you got the email from the Manitoba Association president?
Well, it was actually a bigger reaction than the previous editorial that came out, because at this point I realized there was a theme or an agenda that apparently was being pushed by the RCMP Veterans Association. And I was shocked that not necessarily the content of the book, that isn't what initially shocked me. It was the write-up that stressed that this is for people with open minds that are willing to consider alternative perspectives. And that appeared to be a theme then in relation to the previous editorial, which is very revisionist, very reductive to the damage and even the objectives of the residential schools.
So what exactly did it say inside of it?
It says, let me look at it here. From Truth Comes Reconciliation, fellow members. I would like to draw your attention to a very interesting book, which many of our retired members may be interested in reading. This book is not for people who think the subject and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report are too sacred for either discussion or criticism. Rather, it is for ordinary Canadians. And it goes on to say, this book is for people with open minds, those who are willing to consider alternative perspectives. So that was my issue here, is following an absolutely minimized version of history. This now goes along with that. What made it more disconcerting is that when I complained and aired my view to the author, the D Division, which is Manitoba, president of the Vets Association, all I got back was a short reply that said it is acknowledged. Your email is acknowledged and you are certainly entitled to your opinion. If that was any other organization that you belong to, I think anybody would be upset at the glib response and superficial response.
So, Bruce, what needs to happen for RCMP veterans to really understand how the residential schools affected Indigenous people?
Well, and this is the interesting point, and I want to be clear here. I'm not here to tell anybody the point of view, but it shouldn't be one, and it shouldn't be just an alternate point of view. There are many books, there's much material out there. Soak it all in. Don't just allow an organization to persuade you to read one side. That's confirmation bias. That doesn't do anybody any good. We don't learn that way.
Why do you think there is such a misunderstanding?
That I'm not sure of. I'm just very shocked. I don't know why it is, other than it does point the finger towards systemic racism within the RCMP, because these people that are in the Veterans Association, many are recently retired. They would have been direct supervisors to serving members. They have a voice, and I think they should use it properly.
All right, Bruce, thank you for joining us. That's all the questions we have.
You're very welcome.
Now, the Veterans Association sent us a statement saying the post was an editorial and not associated with the organization. We also contacted the Manitoba president, but we have not heard back. You can read the association's entire statement on our website, aptnnews.ca. The North American Indigenous Games are set to make a return, but it's going to be a while before we see any action. Details coming up after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And our old friend Greg Scriver sent us a picture of the sunset over the Ottawa River. The red glow on the overcast clouds makes for quite the scene. Thanks for sharing this one with us, Greg. If you want to be featured during our photo of the day segment, you can email your picture and the story behind it to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, 28 for St. John's, 22 in Halifax, 28 with showers in Kuujjuaq, 28 under the sun for Nain, 27 with showers for Montreal, rain, and 22 in Chibougamau, 28 with showers for Sault Ste. Marie, showers, and 26 in North Bay, partly cloudy and 25 in Thunder Bay, 1 degree warmer in Sioux Lookout, 25 under sunny skies in God's Lake, 28 and sunny for the Paw. Sunny and 28 for Winnipeg, Gimli, and Dauphin. 29 with showers for Regina, 30 in Saskatoon, 31 in Meadow Lake, 29 in La Ronge. In northern Alberta, 33 for Fort McMurray, 30 in Fort Chip. 32 in Edmonton, 33 and sunny for Medicine Hat. 23 under sunny skies in Vancouver, Smoky, and 36 for Kamloops. 27 in Prince George, 18 with showers for Dease Lake. 16 and rain in Old Crow, rain, and 14 for Whitehorse. 27 in Yellowknife, showers, and 20 for Norman Wells. 0 with a chance of snow in Sax Harbor, 6 with showers in Paulatuck. 21 in Chesterfield and Baker Lake. +1 with a chance of snow in Resolute, 10 and rain in Igloolik. A First Nations brother and sister duo in Winnipeg may only be teenagers, but their age sure hasn't stopped them from teaching the skills and moves to be a powwow dancer. Jaden and Drayden Flat Roulette are 13 and 14 years old. They joined the Mama Wichita Center Powwow Club in 2016. Since then, the pair have grown into wonderful dancers and now teach other youth. The pair host an online powwow workshop every Saturday evening on Zoom through the Mama Ways Moving Forward program, a program designed to get youth out in the community and keep them busy during the pandemic. Drayden and Jaden say they love teaching others.
I enjoy the sounds of the drum, the jingles, and the bells, and just like being around people.
I really love my culture. It's a part of me. It's a part of my family. And I love to see kids my age and younger dancing because it just tells me that we're keeping our culture going.
Great work, Jaden and Drayden. Well, after being postponed a year ago because of the pandemic, the North American Indigenous Games have a new start date. And there'll also be some more money announced with it. The 10th NAG Games will take place in July 2023 and will be held in Halifax and Millbrook First Nation, Nova Scotia. There will also be more funding. There had already been over $7 million committed to the Games. Now the federal government will put an additional $4.5 million forward. Nova Scotia will provide an additional $2.5 million. The Games will see more than 5,000 athletes from 756 nations compete in 16 different sports.
To be able to bring a glimmer of hope and wonderful news for the youth is, let me just say, I get emotional when I think about it. How often do you get the chance to potentially change the lives of thousands of Indigenous young people who get to go back to their communities and bring the experience of these games into their communities and into their own futures? So that's what I'm most excited about, is that ripple effect, that legacy that is the North American Indigenous Games.
Well, those athletes may want to pay attention to this next story, as a Kanien'kehá:ka athlete has landed a spot on Team Canada at the Olympic Games being held in Tokyo next month. Jillian Weir will compete in the women's hammer throw. She also competed at the 2017 World Championships in athletics in the UK. Weir has ties to the Tyendinaga Mohawk territory in southern Ontario from her mother, but she follows the footsteps of her father, a three-time Olympian for Great Britain in discus and hammer throw. Weir will compete in the women's hammer throw qualifying round on August 1st, and we'll be watching that. Well, that's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For news anytime, visit our website. That's aptnnews.ca. Coming up next, an encore presentation of Face to Face. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.